at St. Mary's Church in the United Kingdom. His first scholarly tome, Persaudaran Malay Life in Sri Lanka, first edition, was launched in 2016 and is available for reference at the National Archives, Colombo, Stanford University Library in the United States of America, and at the National Libraries of Sri Lanka and Australia. His first edition was used as a reference by Professor Hussein Mia in writing the account for Malays for the tome titled Peoples of Sri Lanka, published by the Ministry of National Coexistence, Dialogue and Languages, which was launched under the patronage of President His Excellency Maithripala Sirisena on the 18th of July at the BMICH Colombo. Tuan M. Zamir Karim is one of the few authors who have the distinction of their first edition being sold out within a year of its publication. Can we please have you up here?
Murajaya, thank you for that very gracious and I must say very generous introduction. Madam Professor Maitri Vikramasinghe, Her Excellency UN Don Award, Senior Professor K.D. Parnavitana Sir, Deshamanya Tesadevendra, my mentor, plenipotentiaries, academicians, ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening to you all. Selamat datang to my fellow Saudaras and Saudaris. It is truly my honor to welcome all of you today to this ceremony that marks the launch of my second, revised and enlarged edition of Persaudaran, Malay Life in Sri Lanka. I'm greatly beholden to you all for having allotted your invaluable time to grace the occasion with your kind presence. I'm indeed humbled by the overwhelmingly positive responses received for the first edition of this book. It is the motivation derived from these responses that has encouraged me to go in for the second edition. This 720-page anthropological tome unfolds the story of a distinct minority known as the Sri Lankan Malays, an endangered ethnic group that has survived to this day despite the turbulence of history, and my book delves deep into their heritage, culture, patois, ethos, traditions, literature, fashion, military endeavors, folklore, onomastics, cuisine, and lots more. History has it that large proportion of them came as mercenaries from the Indonesian archipelago and Malayan peninsula during the Dutch colonial era, and some were exiled royals, princes, their entourages, the retinue of servants, courtiers, and those of distinction, who were condemned to Ceylon, then a Dutch colony, as state prisoners, and were held captive in the impregnable fortresses in the maritime provinces of this island. Throughout the past centuries, many writers, archaeologists, researchers, and anthropologists have spent eons of time trying to reason the obvious Javanese influence over the etymology of Lankan towns, literal villages, and anchorages. And through their toilsome research, they have uncovered the lost legacy of the Malays of yore. Sometime between 928 to 1006 AD, King Mu Sindok moved the capital of the Kingdom of Medan, Indonesia, to the region of East Java after a series of volcanic eruptions that destroyed the magnificent Borobudur, the largest Buddhist temple complex in the world, and the ravages of nature forced the locals to abandon and leave their ancestral home. First, a contingent of monks was sent to Ceylon by the Chavaka king. Thereupon, vessels carrying Javanese migrant families reached the Lankan shores, and they made a permanent settlement in a region which came to be known as Japane, owing to the formation of the Javanese colony, which came to be later known as Jaffna-Pattinam, the corrupt form of Java-Pattinam. Java to denote the Javanese, and Pattinam in Tamil and Sanskrit refers to the settlement. According to the Lankan chronicles, King Parakramabahu V of Kotte sent a Sinhalese chief along with an escort of Malay and Javanese soldiers to Jaffna to repel the invasions led by Canaries. It was these Malays and Javakas who built the first known fortress in the Chavakacheri region, which was formerly known as Javaka Kotte. According to the account Singhalayo by Professor Senarath Parnavitana, King Parakramabahu V on one occasion lost his rights over the crown and fled to Javaka, Java Island, Tamralinga in Malaya, to seek assistance from the Javanese kings to oust his nephew and claim his kingship. The daughter of King Parakramabahu V of Dedigama, Princess Sunetra Devi, who lived in Palembang, Sumatra, Indonesia, married King Chandabanu of Yapapatuna, whose expedition to the island was to ostensibly seize control over Lord Buddha's tooth relic. King Chandabanu Sri Dharmaraja was a devout Buddhist Malay conqueror who arrived with his foot soldiers, Chavaka mercenaries, wielding blowpipes and poisonous arrows at the Trincomalee fort in 1247 AD. It is also believed that the Javanese sailors and soldiers of Javaka King Chandabanu used the Unawatana coast to prepare for their incursions into the Lankan kingdom. They built a fortress which came to be known as Jakotua in Point de Gaul, and history has it that Jakotua was an enclave where the seafaring Malay tribes such as Orang Bajau from South Celebes and Orang Laut from Riau had first settled. Orang Bajaus, the nomadic tribe, dubbed as sea gypsies, are famed for their aquatic way of life, filled with adventure, whim and vigor. In Sri Lanka, anything outrageous, unconventional, a sudden gaiety or euphoria is called Bajau in Sinhala language. Someone who is dipsomaniac, bohemian, or even the high school raiders are called Bajau Karyas. Thanks to the Bajaus, who reached our island in the 8th century, we have the expression Bajau Karyas. Likewise, other Sinhala words and expressions like ashik for euphoria, jausin natanawa, like to denote to indulge in unbecoming behavior, jigalinona to refer someone dressed in a gaudy manner or bedecked with jewels, kochak to play the fool, ujar to be full of life, and takbir to be dumbfounded, have Malay Javanese origin. Also kolam or kolama in Sinhala has a similar term in Malay, kolam, meaning a humorous episode. The Tamil Buddhist epics such as Kundalakesi and Manimekalai describe the services rendered by the Javaka rulers of Jaffna to the cause of Buddhism, while the archaeological findings in the villages of Vallipuram and Kandarode further testify the patronage extended by Chandabanu for the advancement of Buddhism. The cluster of small stupas, which were built during Chandabanu's reign at Kandarode, shows architectural resemblance to the stupas in the 3 upper terraces at Borobudur, where an Adi Buddha is attached to each stupa. The largest Buddhist shrine to God Nada was built by King Chandabanu, a Malay in Java Kacheri. Alas, the temple was plundered and then razed to the ground by the Portuguese. Several place names in Jaffna are of Javanese origin. The etymology of the region called Taidi is based on the corrupt term Java Vidi. Java means Javanese, while Vidi is the Tamil and Vidya is the Sinhala word for a street. There were Buddhist temples and viharas built of giant-sized bricks in Taidi by Chandabanu, the Javanese king. Chattatopil in Jaffna is based on the etymon Java Topil. Java to denote the Javanese, and Topu is Tamil, means thicket and shrubbery. Thavadi in Jaffna is based on Java Vidya, referring to the Javanese settlement in medieval times. Tavasikulam in Melpatu East, Vaunia district, was where the first Javanese settlement was founded in 1250 AD. And the village was called Javasiveva, meaning habitation of Javanese. Javat Kadu in the Jaffna Peninsula is derived from the Javanese etymon Java Kadua, meaning Javanese sword. It was where the Javanese people developed a tradition of boat or canoe building. It is believed that canoes, known as oruas, were introduced to Ceylon by the Malay Javanese. Hambang Tota, the ancient anchorage, derives its name from Malay words sampan, meaning skiff or boat used for the provision of goods, and Tota, referring to an anchorage. During the ancient Indonesian thalassocracy, Malay seafaring tribes, Orang Laut, Bajaus, Hulu Austronesian people, reached the shores of southern Lanka in the early 8th century after their perilous voyages. In pre-colonial days, Malay fleets refitted at Ceylon for their voyages to Madagascar, Maldivian atolls, and Ormuz. Sinhalese histories of the 13th and 14th centuries referred to them. Javanese were renowned mariners at the time King Parakramabahu the Great reigned over Lanka, and the king maintained good relations with Java. The admirals and captains of King Parakramabahu and Rajasingha I were Javanese and Malays, and Lankan chronicle Chulavamsa helped affirm the fact. There is ample evidence to support the disputed Malay parentage of King Parakramabahu the Great. For the matter of fact, King Mahanabrahma, who is Mahanama of Dakkina Desa, married Princess Ratnavali, a Javanese princess who begot King Parakramabahu. Even the coastal village Chilau, known as Halawat by the Sinhalese, gets its name from the Malay etymon Si Laut. Si in Malay defines by, as, at, which, and Laut is Malay for sea. So Si Laut in Malay is by the sea. Even Ibn Battuta, the Moroccan Berber explorer, in his travels refers to the coastal hamlet as Silaut. Even the Moors and Tamils refer to the hamlet as Silaba, even to this day. Interestingly, most of the Malay residents who lived in British Chilau lived up to the ripe old age. Extraordinary instances of longevity of Chilau Malays are mentioned in the books authored by colonial powers. According to the Asiatic Journal and Monthly Register for British India and Dependencies, Volume 20, Captain Mundu, a Malay officer, died in 1825 at Kalpitting in his 118th year. The review of the results of the census of 1912, authored by Sir Edward Brandis Denham, gives an account of a Malay centenarian, Mastan Mama of the Usan clan, who died in his 110th year in the town of Chilau in 1911. As for the report, the Malays in Chilau credited their good health and longevity to the healthy diet. Any place that begins with Jah is undoubtedly of Malay origin. Like how Brit is the abbreviation of Britain, Jah is the shortened form of Javanese. The reason why we Malays are known as Jah Minisu by the Sinhalese and Jah Manishan or Jah Manasar by the Tamils and Moors. Jah Ela in Negombo means Javanese canal or stream. Why? Because the Javanese are said to have built it during the days of the kings, and Dutch even built an asylum in Jah Ela to treat the Malay lepers who served them as mercenaries. Jah Ela in Gaul, meaning Javanese field, Jah Kotua, fortress of Javanese, Jah Watta, the Javanese promenade in Colombo 7, Jah Goda, the Javanese hamlet in Gongorogoda Pattu Gaul, and the house of the Javakers or Jah Gedera in Kapparanto to Veligama. Aside from the places mentioned, there are many other regions like Kinya, Sammanture, Bolana. Those are examples of Javanese etymology. Under the British, Malays in Ceylon were the privileged minority who formed the socially exclusive intermediate stratum between the natives of the island and the British Burgh elite. They are world renowned for their spirit of camaraderie and conviviality, but their unconquerable fidelity, pervade discipline, perseverance, and faultless service and valor, which have stood the best test in history, have always been and will continue to be their signature features. They identified more with the British rule. The British described the Malays as strong people with powerful characters, more natural leaders, perhaps better suited to leading from the front and making a mark. According to Alexander M. Tulloch, the sturdy Malays of Ceylon is a Sinhala word which refers to the plaited leaf of the coconut palm used for thatching houses. The word Kajan is derived from Malay Kajam. Malays and Javanese from the East Indies are believed to have brought many other traditions with them to Ceylon during the colonial times. The Indonesian archipelago, famed for its cornucopia of extreme sports, the Malays who joined the Ceylon Rifle Regiment introduced Sepak Takraw, Sepak Raga in the early 18th century. Sepak means to kick with the side of the foot, and Raga is the name for a wicker ball made of strips of rattan. The Malay riflemen also introduced a martial art known as Umpat Pojo or Kong Hatara in Sinhalese, and the ponderous Malays in Ceylon Rifles and Police engaged in epic fights known as Pukulan Cina, a form of bare knuckle wrestling during the Hobson Jobson festivals. Frequently, quarreling factions of Ceylonese police force, of which many were Malays, played tug of war to settle differences before those differences could lead to bloodier fights. And this dynamic contest in tuggling is known as Tarik Tambang in Malay language. When we speak about tantalizing delicacies of Malay origin, much of the Lankan food we know and love isn't Lankan at all. Throughout the subcontinent's history, new foods have been introduced through foreign invasions, trade, and colonialism, creating the rich tapestry of cuisine we enjoy today. Vatalappam, Sirkaya in Malaysia, Kokis, Kembang Goyang in Indonesia, Bibikang, Bikang cake in Indonesia, Nasi Goreng, Cina Kueh, Kavum, the Chuchu of Indonesia, Laberia, Dodol, the soft and spongy idli, and of course the Malay pickle of Malay Indonesian origin. Sri Lankan culture wouldn't be the same if not for these Malay contributions. At the very end of the day, publishing a book is not an easy task. And to be precise, it took nearly 5 years for my scribbled manuscript to get published. I managed to break through some of the most inscrutable challenges of getting a manuscript published thanks to the help rendered by my mentor, Deshamanya Sathissa Devendra. I am most indebted to Sir Devendra for his help, encouragement, and inspiration, for introducing me to the excitement of history, research, and documentation, for acquainting me with some interesting facts about Malays in public life. I stand in front of you today as an author is only because of Sir Tissa Devendra. I also would like to thank my grandmother Nehruhun Lai Kayat for advice drawn from her deep knowledge of Sri Lankan history, her ideas, reminiscences without which this work would have been infinitely poorer if it would have been written at all. I would like to thank His Excellency Ranil Wickremesinghe, the Prime Minister of Sri Lanka, for accepting and rendering forward for my revised edition and for his messages. I must also express my gratitude to the Prime Minister's office for their help and camaraderie and for having accepted my manuscript through email and for the prompt responses. I'm particularly grateful to the historians in Sri Lanka and abroad that this book could take the form of a revised and enlarged edition. Please bear with me as I have quite a long list of professors to thank. Dr. Peter B.R. Carey, University of Oxford, Professor Dr. Wen Zawawi Ibrahim of Brunei, Professor Dr. Hanafi Hussein of Malaysia, Professor Dr. Hermano Jabajio of Indonesia, Dr. Leonard Andaya of United States of America, Dr. B.A. Husseimia, who is with us today, the Lankan Malay historian, Dr. K.M.P. Kulasekara of University of California, Dr. Saroja Vetasinghe, the former director of National Archives, Dr. Nirmal Ranjit Devasiri of University of Colombo, Galkande Dhammananda Thero of University of California, and Dr. Minna Tahir for their rigorous help, guidance, advice, and support. I would like to express my appreciation to Mr. Taslim Rahman, President of SLMA, for helping me organize this event. Special thanks also go to the Sri Lanka Malay Association and Mrs. Sabrina Jaya, Chairperson, Research and Documentation Committee. Thank you, Auntie, for your unfailing enthusiasm and support. I would like to thank my darling Mama, Nay Zarindin Kayat Karim, for reading the manuscript and providing me with some critical comments. The advice and encouragement of my beloved Dada, Zahir Karim, were the main reasons for my decision to write the second, upgraded, and revised edition of Persaudaraan, and I would like to express my debt to him for this. More importantly, I dedicate this edition to my darling Dada, whose love and care I cherish, and to whom I owe a great debt of gratitude for his constant support throughout all these years. I also would like to thank the staff at various archives, both at home and abroad, for having assisted greatly with my research, especially those at National Archives, Colombo. Special thanks should go to my publisher, Deshabandhu Sirisumana Godageso, and the staff of Godage and Brothers who made the publication of this project possible. Finally, I wish to thank my late guru, the renowned Sri Lankan Malay lexicographer, Mr. B.D.K. Saldin. His memory will be with me always, and I will be ever grateful for his assistance. As a tribute to my guru, I wish to speak a few words in Bahasa. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hadirin yang berbahagia, salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Yang saya hormati Profesor Maitri Wickremesinghe, paling terhormat Itademili Intisar Tero, Kebutan Duta Besar Kerajaan Belanda, Joan Donaward, Senior Profesor K.D. Parnavitana dan Guru Deshamania Tissa Devendra, serta hadirin bapak-bapak dan ibu-ibu yang telah bersedia hadir pada acara peluncuran buku saya ini. Saya ucapkan terima kasih banyak. Buku ini adalah hasil dari jerih payah saya melakukan research tentang sejarah orang Melayu Sri Lanka. Dalam penelitian ini saya banyak dibantu oleh profesor dan ahli di bidang sejarah Melayu Nusantara. Buku yang saya tulis ini terdiri dari 720 halaman dan terdapat beberapa materi baru yang tidak ada pada buku saya yang sebelumnya. Buku ini saya persembahkan untuk kedua orang tua saya serta masyarakat Melayu Sri Lanka di mana saja berada. Saya akan tutup sambutan ini dengan sebuah pantun dari B.D.K. Saldin. Kalau ada jarum di yang patah, if you find a broken needle, jangan disimpan dalam peti, don't keep it in your chest. Kalau ada kata yang salah, if you find that we have erred, jangan disimpan dalam peti, hati, don't harbor it in your heart. Words cannot express the tremendous grief our Malay community is experiencing over Mr. B.D.K's demise last week. As a community, we mourn the tragic loss of Mr. B.D.K. Saldin. Let us all now observe a minute of silence in loving memory of the greatest Sri Lankan Malay author and lexicographer, Mr. B.D.K. Saldin. Thank you. Mr. B.D.K. Sardine will be irreplaceable and will always live in the hearts of thousands around our planet who have read his books and dictionaries. For an event of this magnitude, I might have inadvertently missed out some names. It is not intended to diminish or overlook your useful contributions, which I appreciate immensely. The study of the past is essential for rooting people in time. Our grandparents, elders, and all people are living histories. African American civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr. clearly saw this. He even proclaimed, "We are not makers of history, we are made by history." To take a few obvious examples, communities speak languages that are inherited from the past. They live in societies with complex cultures, traditions, and religions that have not been created on the spur of the moment. People use technologies that they have not themselves invented, and each individual is born with a personal variant of an inherited template known as the genome, which has evolved through the entire lifespan of the human species. For understanding the linkages between the past and the present is absolutely basic for a good understanding of the condition of being human. That, in a nutshell, is why history matters. It is not useful, it is essential. The more you know about the past, the better you are prepared for the future. With this motivational quote by Theodore Roosevelt, who became the youngest president in the US history, I wish to end this long speech of mine by thanking you all once again very much for your attendance, time, and patience. Banyak terima kasih. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Zamir Karim for that insight into the latest book, Persaudaraan. And I would like to now invite the publisher, Gorige, to present the book to the author. Zamir Karim will now present the book to the head table.
Thank you, madam. Thank you.
For tonight, Senior Professor K.D. Paranavithana, who graduated from the University of Ceylon, Peradeniya in 1968. He joined the National Archives of Sri Lanka in 1970 and in 1979 studied archive administration at the National Archives of the Netherlands in The Hague, where he specialized in 17th and 18th century Dutch language. In 1994, he obtained his PhD at the University of New South Wales in Australia, his thesis being on the archives of the Dutch East India Company administration in Ceylon, 1640 to 1796. In 1996, he retired as Deputy Director, National Archives, taking up a university career at the Rajarata University of Sri Lanka, where he is presently the Professor of Humanities and simultaneously serves as member of the University Council and the Senate. He is a member of the Royal Netherlands Association of Archivists and the Australian Society of Archivists. He is the author of several books in Sinhala and in English and has contributed widely to scholarly journals, both national and international. Land for Money, The Dutch Land Registration in Sri Lanka and Gaul, The Heritage City are two of his recent publications. He is also co-author of Maps and Plans of Dutch Ceylon. In 2002, on the occasion of 400 years of Sri Lanka-Netherlands relations, Her Majesty Queen Beatrix of the Netherlands honored him as a Knight of the Order of Oranje Nassau. Sir, could we please have you on stage?